Majority Leader.
Mr. President, 4,487. 4,487. That, Mr. President, is the number of American service members who perished in Iraq by the time the last combat troops departed in 2011, over a decade ago. Joining them are over 32,000 American service members and civilians wounded in action, and tens of thousands more who've struggled, many to this very day, with everything from toxic burn pit exposure to PTSD. It is with these brave service members and civilians in mind, and their families, and all who have been impacted by the war in Iraq, that the Senate today votes to repeal the Iraq authorizations for use of military force from 2002 and 1991. The United States, Iraq, the entire world has changed dramatically since 2002. And it's time the laws on the books catch up with those changes. These AUMFs have outlived their use. These repeals will not harm our service members abroad, nor will it hinder our ability to keep Americans safe. Every year we keep these AUMFs on the books is another chance for a future administration to abuse them. War powers belong in the hands of Congress. And so we have an obligation to prevent future presidents from exploiting these AUMFs to bumble us into a new Middle East conflict. I'm glad that repealing these AUMFs has been a bipartisan effort, and I hope that this process can be, it should be, a blueprint for how the Senate works over the next few years. We will have amendments without being dilatory. We will have debate without stall tactics. And we will continue to look assiduously, diligently, for other opportunities to advance bipartisan bills. There are many members and staff I wish to thank for making today's vote possible, because this effort has been years in the making. First, thank you to Chairman Menendez of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, as well as Senator Kaine. To watch him work on this bill, not only day in, day out, not only month in, month out, but year in, year out, because he had such firm belief that it was the right thing to do, was a joy. Thank you also to Senator Young, who worked very hard to make this happen and brought so many of his colleagues along. And I want to thank staff who did the great work here too. Megan Bartley, Andrew Keller, Elisa Catalano-Ewers, J.C. Jane, Nick Barbash, Lauren O'Brien, Brandon Anderson. And of course, my staff. I am blessed with the greatest staff in the world, as you'll hear about soon enough, about one of them. Lane Bodian, Megan Tyra, Mike Kiken. The American people are tired of endless wars in the Middle East. We owe it to our service members and our veterans, as well as their families and all communities impacted by the war, to repeal these AUMFs today. I urge a strong yes vote later this morning. On fire grants, as I said a minute ago, we're trying to move on bipartisan legislation that really matters to the average American person. And one of these is going to be the Fire Grants and Safety Act. Later today, the Senate will vote to invoke cloture on the motion to proceed to the Fire Grants and Safety Act. This bipartisan legislation would make sure that both SAFER and AFG, two federal grant programs that our paid and volunteer firefighters rely on, remain available. If we don't extend these grants, they'll expire in a few months and leave our firefighters without access to the resources they need to keep our communities safe. Our firefighters, paid and volunteer, are brave. They risk their lives for us. They run to danger, not away from it. We need to ensure they have the equipment and personnel necessary to do their jobs for their own safety and the safety of those they protect. And we need this especially in smaller, more rural, more suburban areas where there often isn't enough revenue to afford more resources. I urge my colleagues to vote yes, so we can move forward quickly on this legislation. Now on the debt ceiling. We are almost a quarter of the way through 2023, and House Republicans have still failed to answer the most important question of their majority. What is your plan? What is the plan of House Republicans to raise the debt ceiling? We hear a new explanation seemingly every day. from some new corner of the Republican conference. But none of it adds up to what Republicans need most, a clear, detailed, and serious plan. Even this week, Speaker McCarthy has in desperation tried another new and obviously failing approach. He laid out a new round of vague conditions, each one more amorphous than the last, and none of them with any specifics. And then he pulled a huge number out of the sky, $4 trillion, without telling us where, when, or how he'd get to it. That's not a plan. Everyone knows that. Republicans have been utterly flailing. One day they say they'll release a budget. Then they say they can't release a budget. One corner of the party says certain programs are off the table. Then another group of Republicans suggests the opposite. House Republican leadership is doing everything except the one thing they must do: show the American people your plan, House Republicans. Show us your plan. So when Speaker McCarthy points fingers at Democrats, all he's doing, it's so obvious, is trying to deflect from problems he has in his own conference. That is what's going on every time we hear a new idea, read a new letter, or hear a new set of talking points from the Republicans. They're far too divided to unite around a single proposal. The MAGA wing is pulling in one direction, those in the middle pulling another way. There's no consensus in the Republican House caucus. The solution to the debt ceiling, however, is staring Republicans in the face. Do what we have done before, Democrats and Republicans, under President Trump, under President Biden. Stop the brinksmanship, stop threatening default, and work with Democrats on a clean extension of the debt ceiling. No more kicking the can down the road. Speaker McCarthy, where's your plan? Democrats and Republicans worked together, as I said, under President Trump, even when Democrats had the majority, even when Republicans had the majority and Democrats could have blocked it. We didn't. We knew our responsibilities to the people of America who would be so devastated by a lapse in the debt ceiling, and their interest rates and their car costs and their home costs and so much else would go up. Well, we did this before, working together in a bipartisan way, without brinksmanship, without hostage-taking, and we should do it again this year. Nominations on hold. Now, for years, decades, both parties have cooperated in the Senate to confirm military promotions, non-political, simply the military doing its job and promoting people who deserve it. We've worked and cooperated to confirm those promotions, to ensure our military's work continues unimpeded and our national security remains strong. But today, one member, only one member, the senator from Alabama, Senator Tuberville, is now blocking more than 180 military promotions because he objects to women in the military accessing reproductive care. In doing so, the senior senator from Alabama is putting the security of America in jeopardy and risks permanently politicizing the promotion of routine military promotions. As Secretary Austin warned yesterday, quote, this is our Secretary of Defense, former General, four-star General Austin, quote, not approving the recommendations for promotions actually creates a ripple effect throughout the force that makes us far less ready than we need to be. Far less ready than we need to be, Senator Tuberville. This is our national security. That's what Austin said. Now, the senior senator from Alabama claims that his hold has nothing to do with the Supreme Court decisions in Dobbs. Of course it does. It has everything to do with it. He's telling women in the military they're not allowed to make their own decisions about their health. That's wrong. I assure the senator that our women in the military are more than capable of making those decisions for themselves, and I assure the senator that the vast majority of Americans do not agree with him that he should make the choices of women in the military who risk their lives for us about their health. It's disappointing, Mr. President, it's disappointing to see that more of my colleagues on the other side have yet to call out the senator from Alabama's reckless stunt. I thank those who indeed have raised their voices, but we need more. Republicans who claim to be such great supporters of our military must denounce the harm the senator from Alabama is causing. All of us, on both sides, feel deeply passionate about issues from time to time. I respect that Senator Tuberville, whose views dramatically differ from mine, has deep feelings about this. Well, Senator Tuberville, I have deep feelings on certain issues. So do the other 99 senators. But we don't hold up military promotions and risk our national security because of those deep feelings. If every one of us did what he is doing, the senator from Alabama is doing, the military would collapse. So we ought to move forward. I implore my Republican colleagues to speak out and prevail on the senator from Alabama so we can get these promotions confirmed, get our military operating to its full capacity, and continue working to protect the nation. And now, tribute to one of the greatest staffers, I think, certainly that I've ever had, and I think that the Hill has had in a very long time. And I would quote Tina Turner, simply the best. I will spare him and his parents who are in the gallery singing it, although we did talk about doing karaoke together at some point. Well, Mr. President, that's what they'll say, what they already say about the person whom I wish to honor here today at the end of my remarks. It is never, never easy to say goodbye to a member of your team. We in Schumerland, as we call our group, have such a close-knit staff. We are friends, we are pals, we have each other's backs, we protect each other. It's a beautiful thing. And even when people leave, they're still part of our family. And we see them all the time. We saw many of them last night as we said goodbye to Jerry at a local pub. An appropriate place, I might say, to do that. Well, so it's never easy to say goodbye to a member of your team, but it's even harder when that person has worked with you or put up with you, depending on who you ask, for 15 years. It's still harder when that person happens to be Jerry Petrella. His real name is Gerard Anthony Petrella, reflecting his Irish and Italian roots. I have nicknames for some of my staffers. They just pop in. He's always been Gerald, even though his name's Gerard. I think it's 15 years he's been Gerald. It hasn't stuck with anyone but me, but it's there. Well, it's with immense gratitude, sorrow as well, that I close today by saying thank you, and bidding farewell to one of the very best to ever do it here in the Senate, our policy director, Jerry. Jerry, you started out, I met Jerry when he was a staffer for a local town official. I said, boy, this guy's good. And we're always on the lookout, myself and my two great chiefs, who I am so grateful for, Mike Lynch and Martin Brennan, two tough Irish guys who've kept this Jewish kid going forward for a long time. Anyway, we always are looking out for good staff. And when we saw this guy, we said, we got to get him. Brennan sat down with him, said, oh, he's good. I sat down with him. He reminded me last night that I had him drive to come talk to me before the Super Bowl of the Giants and Patriots, the first one. They won 2. I remind my friends from Massachusetts and New England. And I met him and I said, oh boy. So Jerry began running our Long Island office. And he did an amazing job. So good that after he was had been done 4 years there, and whatever Jerry does, he works his heart out. He never burns himself out because he's got incredible energy, but he works his heart out. And it was time for a change, so we asked him to come be our director, a new position of economic development here in Washington. And the number of jobs and the number of projects and the number of things he created were just amazing. And then, of course, he became our policy director. And when I became the leader, he became the policy director of the whole Senate. So he did amazing things there. As I've said before, rarely can you say when someone leaves that they have, no matter what else they do in their lives, they have so benefited millions of Americans, many of whom have seen the benefits already, $35 insulin for Medicare, and many more who will see those benefits in years to come. They may not know Jerry Petrella did it, but we do. We do. He changed the world. His work on such important, we had the greatest 2 years that this Senate has seen. We led the country, we led the party, we led everybody in doing this with the BIF and the IRA and the CHIPS and Science Bill and the PACT Act and the gun bill and so much else. Marriage equality. Wouldn't have happened without Jerry Petrella. That's about the greatest compliment you can pay to somebody. So Jerry, thank you. Thank you for never giving up on me after all these years. Thank you for coming to the office every single day and pushing, pushing, pushing. He's not only brilliant, he not only comes with good ideas, but he's a jackhammer. Rat-tat-tat-tat-tat-tat-tat-tat. He keeps pushing and pushing and pushing till he gets it done. So thank you for doing that, for setting the tone of our team, for defining our vision, for laying out a strategy and executing in good times and bad. Thank you for working to the bone to find a path forward to pass our agenda, especially when it seemed out of reach. So, thank you. And I don't want to neglect the fact that he has deep feelings on so many different issues, and he had the luxury and the ability to get those done. So I also thank Jerry for staying true to himself and his values as he worked in the maelstrom that is Senate legislating on such important bills. Jerry's a man with fire, on fire with love for his country, love for the issues, love for the work. And so thank you, Jerry. Thank you to Jerry's parents, as I mentioned, here in the gallery. Thank you to George, who had both of his parents often in the office for many long hours, cute little George, and our great legislative director, Megan Tyra. Jerry, thank you for all these great years. You'll always be in our family. You'll always have a place here in the Senate. My very best on the next wonderful chapter in your life. God bless you. I yield the floor.